Here we have one of the blocks of snail trail. This is a 6.5 inch raw edge to raw edge, 6 inches finished. To make the entire design, that'll be 4 of these, you will want 16 squares, 2-inch squares. You want 4 red, 4 yellow, 4 green, 4 blue. So we want 16 2-inch squares. In addition to that, you'll want one of each of the 4 colours of 4 1/4 inch squares. And these are to be cut in half on the diagonal, making quarter square triangles. So you want 4 1/4 inch squares. And they're going to be cut diagonally like this to make quarter square triangles, so corner to corner. When you've done that, you will in addition require 8 3 7/8 inch squares. That's 2 of each of the 4 colours. And these need to be cut in half, corner to corner, making half square triangles. As soon as you've got the pieces cut out, we can now begin. So I've got my 4 squares, my quarter square triangles and my half square triangles. To make one of the 4 blocks, you first need to start off with by sewing your 4 squares together. So lay them out in your chosen colour order, and I've got green, blue, yellow and then red, and I'm going to sew them together like that. I would stitch those 2 together to make a pair, those 2 together to make a pair, and then sew this set to that set, forming a larger square, as this one is. Apropos the seams, I tend to press the seams open and flat. I think it's less bulky in the middle. Although this particular block is a bit of a so-and-so with the seams, and you may find, except in the centre, pushing them to the side as we do the rest of it. So the middle. I'm now going to attach the 4 quarter square triangles to the other sides. Now the reason why these have to be quarter square is this is a square and the edges of the square are on the straight grain. A quarter square triangle, and remember it was cut like that, has 1 straight side and 2 stretchy or on the bias sides. Now you might be a little bit confused because they are exactly the same shape as a half square triangle, but a half square triangle is not the same grain wise. It has a longest edge, which was straight on the quarter square, is on the bias on the half square triangle, and then it has 2 straight edges. If I were to put half square triangles on this block, I'm going to be stitching a stretchy edge to a straight edge, and it will grow like mad. There are times when you have to do this, but we're going to try and avoid that because I want our final piece to lie nice and flat. So the quarter square triangle is going to be stitched on with the straight edge of the quarter square triangle to the straight edge of that centre square. Place it on top, aligning the point of the triangle with the seam. Pin if necessary, and you're going to sew that one on. I would then put on the opposite side and do the same thing. Now, if you're making obviously all 4 blocks at once, you'll probably chain piece. So 1 onto one side, 1 onto the other. I've done it on this sample, it's a slightly smaller sample. So I stitched the blue one on, having lined it up with the centre, and I press my seam open and flat, and then I attach the red one. When you've done that, I suggest you press very gently, and the reason why you want to press very gently is the sides of these triangles are on the bias and they stretch. You're now going to take the remaining 2 pieces, and it'll be yellow that goes along here, right sides together, get the point aligned with the middle, and green goes on the other side, right sides together, get the point along the middle. You will find there'll be an overlap here, and the overlap should be on the seam allowance. And with luck, when you've done it, it's going to look something like this one. Now, this particular square now has, because we use quarter square triangles, all the edges are on the bias. They stretch like there's no tomorrow, so be really careful. Press it gently, don't iron what sits out of it, press it. What was going to happen now is I'm now going to attach my 4 half square triangles, and this will make the block nice and firm and make it behave well. So here again, the colours rotate round. So if I take this side, it will have a green one. Where's the green one? There's the green one. Place the green one on top. I would suggest you pin it, and yet again, get the point of the triangle in the middle of the shape so you can see that's about right. I sew this on not from this side but from the underside, because on the underside there is a little join in the piecing. You can just see it there. And that's what you want to aim for. Technically, this should be 1/4 of an inch from here to there, but it may not be. These little pointy bits are well worth cutting off. So always trim the ears off when you're happy that the seam has been completed and you're happy with it, not going to unpick it. So little ears come off. All the little ears want to come off. And another little ear. Here we go. These are fabric ears, not your ears. So put this on top and then stitch this on, doing quarter, quarter, quarter. Again, it'll hang out the sides, and I found I did need 2 pins to stabilize it. And you're sewing through that junction and off the end. And once more, I would do opposite sides, and then I do top and bottom. This is where you may decide to press your seams to one side, but I found pressing them open gives you a slightly better effect. As and when you sew them on, again, make sure you cut any little extraneous ears off. The ears always want to come off. They add extra bulk. So ears. Sometimes I'm a little lazy and don't cut my ears off to the end. And that's basically how we're going to make up one of the blocks. And the reason for using quarter squares and half squares is to end up with straight edges to my block, because the last thing you want to have, as we have on this sample, the mid stage, is to have stretchy edges. Should you ever have a design that ends up with stretchy edges or things on the bias, and there are quite a lot of designs, it pays to be very careful, and then when you've completed your quilt, your cushion, your panel, is to sew round the edge with a long stitch and just stay stitch it. Dressmakers do it, patchworkers don't do it often enough. Once you've made one of the blocks, you're going to repeat exactly the same thing with the remaining pieces and make 3 more blocks. And then we can put them together to arrange as your snail trail. The blocks can go together in a wide variety of different ways, and just let me show you in a moment. So I could put my 4 blocks together with the red to the middle. I could have it with the yellow to the middle. I could have it with the blue to the middle. I could have it with the green to the middle. The choice is yours. And all you're going to do now is stitch it together. But you might have said to yourself, not sure I want to go to all that effort. She showed a bigger one. That's just one of these made larger at the beginning. So let me show you that. And there is just one snail trail made slightly bigger. And I'll talk you through how that goes in just a second. When you come to sew them together, if you're going to make the block made of 4 pieces, join 2 together, and then straight across the middle. And you're going to aim to line up these points. Now, they may not be exactly together, so it's the points you line up, not the edges of the fabric. So lay this on top, and here again, in this open seam, you can see where to stitch. So if you line up your points, that point there and that point there, not the edges of the fabric, and you aim to sew through this junction, you should be pretty spot on. Once you've sewn this pair together, stitch the other pair together and then join it straight across the middle. And that will be your block made up of 4 snail's trails. To make the single snail trail, you either are going to have to waste quite a lot of fabric because you're going to be cutting out squares and then cutting them into half squares, or squares and cutting them into quarter squares, or you can use one of these commercial tools I will show you. So to make the larger one, you understand that the middle will be exactly the same. It's 4 2-inch squares stitched together to make a centre square. You would then need, unless you're going to use the tool I'm about to show you, to cut a 4 1/4 inch square of blue and one of red and one of yellow and one of green, and cut them into quarter square triangles, and that would mean you'd be wasting quite a lot of fabric. You would in addition need to cut 4 squares, 1 green, 1 blue, 1 red, 1 yellow, of 3 7/8, and cut them in half. How can we avoid that? Well, you can avoid that by having one of these. Now, this happens to be a quarter square triangle, and this one's actually called a companion angle. And it has all the seam allowances already added into it. So that will do your quarter squares, And then there is a half square triangle. Now these are made by Easy Quilting, and this is an easy angle, but there are other companies who do similar things, and the seam allowances are all built in. So to get your initial quarter square triangles that are going to go round the block, rather than cutting a whole square, all you need to do is to get a scrap of fabric, and let's just move these pieces out the way, and basically you will lay the tool on the top, and we're looking at the 2-inch line here. It says 3. 3 means the finished measurement, and if you wanted to check, this center square actually measures 3.5 raw edge to raw edge, so its finished measurement is 3. 3 will fit that side. So to get 1/4 square triangle that will have a finished size of 3, all I need to do is to put my template onto a scrap of fabric with the 3 line aligned with one edge and cut up here along the top and down the other side again. Now I'm sitting down, so I'm doing this slightly awkwardly. I would prefer to stand up, but then it makes things difficult. And one of those will be exactly the same size as one of those. And you save a fraction of fabric because the point gets cut off. So I can cut my next quarter square triangles using that tool. How do you cut the half square triangles? Well, the half square triangles are equally easy. And here again, the measurements on here relate to the raw edge size of the finished square. Sorry, raw edge size of the square. So I now want a 3-inch finished square, which if I was going to cut it into quarter square triangles, I'd have to cut 3 7/8. Because I've got this tool, it'll be 3.5 inches I will need to cut, or that's the measurement I need to look at. And the simple way of doing that is just to find a right angle, a corner. If you haven't got a right angle, you can always use this tool to cut it. Place the template on the top and look at the 3.5-inch line and just cut. If I only wanted one to fit a 2.5-inch, that's raw edge to raw edge square, it would be there. If I wanted 1.5, it would be there. If I wanted more, it would be there. So this is the raw edge measurement of the side you are going to put it to. There is my half square triangle, which as you can see is exactly the same size as the other ones. If you were going to use this particular tool and make multiples, i.e. you're going to make a lot of them, the neat way to do it is to take your 2 pieces of fabric, and I'm working in 3.5-inch cut strips, which when I've joined them together will give me a 3.5-inch raw edge to raw edge half square triangle square. Finished, it'll be 3. It's all a bit confusing in the beginning, but as long as you remember that mainly we want to talk about finished measurements. So the tool goes on the top, 3.5, that's the width of the strip. Cut up the edge of the template. What happens now is you might notice you've got 2 triangles with a bit missing. It saves you 3/8 of an inch. To get the next set, you flip the template over. You still align the 3.5-inch line because this is the width of the strip, and this little black bit now hangs off the bottom, and you cut. And this set will be exactly the same as that set, and when you join these 2 together, you will get a 3.5-inch raw edge square or a 3-inch finished one. So it's a great tool to have, as indeed is this one. Once you have pieced the bits together in the middle and made one of those, you're then going to need 2 more sets of pieces. Now, if you're cutting squares, you could go and cut for the next set of squares. You will want a 7.25-inch square, which you will have to chop into 4, and you're going to waste some fabric. You don't want to do that. So let's go back to my bit of fat material and my companion angle. And I'm now going to be looking at 6 because this is 6.5 inches raw edge to raw edge or thereabouts, which is 6 inches finished. So back to the companion angle. Lay the companion angle on my fabric, and I'm going to align the 6 line with the edge of the material. So line it up. There we go. And save as much fabric as possible. Up there, along there, and down the other side. Slightly missed it there because I'm sitting down. Right. And this will be the correct size to fit along that edge of our snail trail. And you'll obviously want to cut the same in blue and the same in red and the same in where have they gone to. I had them there a moment ago. There they are. And then we'll have a red one. And you know how to stitch these on. It's exactly the same technique. Put them on this way up. Align the midpoint of this with the seam. Stitch it from that side, and then you can see where to sew through because of the little point. So green goes there and blue goes there. But this block's going to have stretchy edges, so we need to stable it. So now we're going to add half square triangles to the corner. And you could go and cut yourself 6 and 7/8 inch squares and cut them in half, or make life really simple for yourself. This entire template is exactly the right size. You just cut round the template, just exactly like that. So I need a yellow one. Let me have a yellow one, and then I can put it onto the block. Where's the best place to cut this one out? I could actually cut it out of, put it round there. So let me turn it round there. That'll save the most fabric. Up here, along there. So I'm just cutting the whole thing. Turn the material round. Do make sure you cut these things out on the straight grain. Up the edge there. And this will then fit the last 4 corners of my block. So they will go on something like this. And there they are. So that's how you make the whole snail trail. You just need to make up the center. Then you can either cut a whole load of 1/4 square triangles. So for these pieces you will need to have a 7 1/4, and for these pieces you'll need to have 6 7/8 and waste fabric, or go and indulge in something like these tools. They are particularly good. A variety of companies make them. So that's it. There you have your snail trail in 2 ways.